The sun hung high in the sky, baking the park in a golden glow. Heat shimmered off the pavement, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and melting asphalt. Jake adjusted his sunglasses, relishing the brief relief from the blinding light. It was a rare day off, and he intended to enjoy it. Nothing but a book, a bench under a sycamore tree, and a chilled bottle of water. The moment was perfect, until it wasn't. A sharp voice sliced through the peaceful hum of the park. "Excuse me." Jake barely glanced up from his book. The voice had that particular edge, the kind that signaled trouble. But maybe, just maybe, if he ignored it. "Young man." Too late. He sighed, lowering his book and looking toward the source of the interruption. A woman stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her face twisted in what could only be described as righteous fury. She had the precise energy of someone who had been waiting for an excuse to be outraged. "Yes." Jake kept his voice neutral. Her gaze zeroed in on his face, or more specifically, the sunglasses perched on his nose. "Take those off." Jake blinked. "What?" "The sunglasses," she repeated, as if speaking to a slow-witted child. "Take them off. Right now." A flicker of amusement crossed Jake's face. Why?" Her nostrils flared. "Because the sun was put there by God for a reason." Jake stared at her. He searched her face for any sign that this was a joke, some bizarre attempt at humor. Nothing. She was serious. "I'm sorry, what?" She huffed impatiently, stepping closer. "The sun gives us light. It gives us warmth. It's part of God's design, and you're rejecting it. You are covering your eyes, intentionally avoiding his gift." Jake leaned back against the bench, suppressing a laugh. "Lady, I'm just trying to keep from going blind." Her expression darkened. "You're mocking me." "I'm really not," he said, lifting his sunglasses briefly. "It's called light sensitivity. Some people's eyes, mine included, don't handle bright sunlight well. That's why sunglasses exist." She scoffed. "Weakness." "Excuse me? God made our eyes to see his creation," she pressed. "And yet here you are, hiding from it. You don't need sunglasses. You need faith." Jake exhaled through his nose, debating whether to engage or walk away. He should have known better, should have recognized the type. The world had always been full of people who believed their personal convictions trumped basic reality. He tried reason one last time. "Look, I respect whatever beliefs you have, but this is just absurd. My sunglasses aren't hurting anyone." She gasped as if he had spat on a Bible. "You don't care about faith at all, do you?" Jake rubbed his temples. "Ma'am, I'm sitting in a park, minding my own business. You're the one coming up to me." Her face twisted in frustration. "It's people like you that are ruining this country, rejecting faith, rejecting nature, hiding behind." She gestured wildly at his sunglasses as if they were a personal affront. "I won't allow it." Jake laughed. An actual genuine chuckle at the sheer lunacy of it all. That, of course, only enraged her further. "How dare you laugh at me?" she snapped. "Take them off. Right now." His amusement faded. "No." Her eyes widened at the defiance. "What did you just say?" "I said no." Jake's voice was calm, firm. He wasn't about to let some random stranger dictate what he could and couldn't wear. She stepped even closer, her presence suddenly suffocating. "You're defying God's light." Jake met her gaze, unflinching. "And you're defying common sense." The words hung between them, electric. For a moment he thought she might slap him. Instead, she let out a frustrated screech, loud enough that several people nearby turned to look. The murmur of quiet amusement rippled through the park, strangers exchanging knowing glances. Karen, as Jake had already mentally labeled her, noticed the eyes on her. She straightened, composing herself, though her face was still flushed with anger. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "People like you always do." And with that, she turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath about disrespect and divine punishment. Jake shook his head, exhaling slowly. He expected that would be the end of it, just another bizarre public encounter to laugh about later. But he had underestimated her. He had no idea that this was only the beginning. Jake assumed the bizarre confrontation at the park would be the last he'd see of the woman. A fleeting, ridiculous moment in an otherwise normal day. He was wrong. The trouble began subtly at first. Whispers from neighbors, odd glances at the grocery store, a strange tension in the air that he couldn't quite place. It wasn't until his barista at the local cafe hesitated before handing over his coffee that he realized something was off. You're the sunglasses guy, right? She asked, her tone cautious. Jake frowned. I wear sunglasses, yeah. Why? She glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers, then leaned in. Some lady came in here ranting about you yesterday, saying you hate the sun or something, that you're trying to turn people against God's light. Jake blinked. You're joking. I wish. She shrugged. She was telling anyone who'd listen. Kept saying she was warning the community. A sinking feeling settled in Jake's stomach. He thought back to the furious woman in the park, the way she had promised he'd regret defying her. At the time, it had seemed like empty bluster. Now, it appeared she had taken her crusade beyond the park benches. Days passed and her campaign escalated. Jake overheard snippets of conversation from passing strangers. That's the guy. He refuses to acknowledge the Lord's light. Probably one of those atheists trying to corrupt the town. He brushed it off at first, unwilling to give credence to what seemed like playground-level gossip. But then came the pamphlets. An entire stack appeared at his apartment complex's front desk, printed on cheap, glossy paper. The cover read, Asterisk, the man who rejects the sun. A warning to our community. Asterisk inside was a rambling, paranoid tirade about modern-day heretics and men who cover their eyes from God's truth. It didn't mention him by name, but it didn't need to. The accompanying grainy photo, clearly taken from a distance, showed him sitting in the park, sunglasses in place. That was the moment Jake realized Karen wasn't just a nuisance. She was obsessed. He stormed over to the complex manager, waving the pamphlet in the air. This is harassment. The manager sighed, rubbing his temples. Yeah, we've had a few complaints about this woman. She's been leaving these around town. So why hasn't anyone stopped her? She's not technically breaking any laws. It's free speech, as long as she's not threatening you. Jake let out a humorless laugh. So she can run around slandering me, and I just have to take it? The manager shrugged apologetically. Best advice? Ignore her. She'll lose interest eventually. But Karen didn't lose interest. If anything, she doubled down. She started appearing near his apartment, standing at the street corner as if waiting for him to leave. Whenever he passed, she'd shake her head in theatrical disappointment, sometimes muttering prayers under her breath. Then, one afternoon, Jake arrived home to find a small gathering outside his building. A handful of people, mostly older, clutching Bibles or handmade signs, stood near the entrance, their faces solemn. Repent, one woman murmured as he walked by. Another, a balding man with a booming voice, pointed an accusatory finger. You can still choose to walk in the light, son. Jake stopped in his tracks, incredulous. You've got to be kidding me. And then he saw her. Karen stood at the center of the group, a self-satisfied smirk stretching across her face. You've drawn attention to yourself, young man, she called out, as if addressing a wayward disciple. People are concerned. Jake scoffed. Concerned about what? My choice in eyewear. She clasped her hands together, shaking her head in mock pity. It's deeper than that. You refuse to acknowledge his light. That's dangerous thinking. Dangerous to who? Karen stepped forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. To everyone. To our town. People follow examples, and yours is a bad one. If we start rejecting God's gifts, where does it end? Jake let out a sharp laugh, running a hand through his hair. You have got to find a hobby. Her smile faltered, replaced by something colder. You don't understand. But you will. He didn't give her the satisfaction of a response. Instead, he pushed past the group and entered his building, heart pounding with a mix of anger and disbelief. This had gone far enough. Ignoring her hadn't worked. Reasoning with her had been a joke. She was escalating, and the town was starting to listen. It was time for a new approach, one that Karen wouldn't see coming. Jake sat at his desk, fingers drumming against the wood, mind racing. Ignoring Karen had failed. Logic had failed. And now, she had taken her absurd crusade to the streets, dragging strangers into her delusion. He wasn't just some guy in sunglasses anymore. He was a villain in her story, a symbol of defiance that she had to stamp out. But if she wanted a battle, she'd get one. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his gallery. Over the past week, he had started recording Karen's antics. At first, it had been out of frustration, a way to remind himself later just how ridiculous this situation had become. But now, those clips had a purpose. He selected the best moments. Karen ranting in the park, her mini-protest outside his apartment, the insane pamphlet with his blurry photo. He stitched them together, adding subtitles for emphasis. At the top, in bold white letters, he typed, "Karen declares war on sunglasses. A true story." Then he hit upload. Within hours, the video exploded. Comments flooded in. Asterisk, "This can't be real." Asterisk, asterisk, "She's like a final boss in a religious RPG." Asterisk, asterisk, "Is this a cult initiation?" Asterisk. Jake refreshed the page and watched as the view count climbed, people sharing it across platforms. Memes popped up. Karen's face photoshopped onto medieval paintings of inquisitors. Captions like asterisk, "Sunglasses? Heresy." Asterisk, someone even remixed her rants into an auto-tuned song. By the next day, local news had picked it up. A reporter stopped him outside his apartment, microphone in hand. "Jake, how does it feel to have gone viral?" He smirked. "I didn't go viral. She did." Karen, however, wasn't taking her newfound fame well. That afternoon, she posted a shaky Facebook Live video, her expression taut with fury. "The devil works through deception," she hissed into the camera. "I am being persecuted for speaking the truth." Jake watched with morbid fascination as the comments poured in. Asterisk, "Karen, just put on some sunglasses and go home." Asterisk, asterisk, "God's light doesn't need your PR campaign, lady." Asterisk. She doubled down, ranting about morality and the corruption of society. But it was too late. The internet had turned on her. Even people who might have agreed with her before now distanced themselves, not wanting to be part of the spectacle. And then came the real humiliation. Karen had spent years cultivating her image in the community, active in church groups, outspoken in neighborhood meetings. But when the pastor of her own congregation publicly addressed the situation, shaking his head in visible embarrassment, the final cracks began to form. "We don't condone harassment in the name of faith," he said in a statement. "Karen's actions do not represent our values." Jake watched the clip 3 times, grinning wider each time. Her supporters, what few remained, began dropping like flies. The self-righteous sermons on her social media were met with mockery. People she once commanded respect from now whispered behind her back. And then, as if to hammer in the final nail, her landlord got involved. One evening, as Jake walked past the street corner where Karen often loomed, he noticed something different. She wasn't standing there. No signs. No Bible-wielding followers. Just an empty sidewalk. Then he saw it. A notice posted on the front door of her apartment building. "Tenancy violation under review." Jake grinned. It seemed even Karen's landlord had limits. Karen wasn't one to surrender quietly. For days after her online humiliation, she disappeared from public view. The protests stopped. The pamphlets vanished. The street corner where she once stood, eyes burning with zeal, remained empty. It would have been easy to assume she had finally given up. Jake wasn't that naive. When trouble finally came knocking, it did so in the form of a town hall meeting. He heard about it from his neighbor, an older woman who had found the whole saga amusing. "She's pushing for some kind of moral policy against sunglasses in public spaces," she said, barely suppressing laughter. "Says it's about restoring community values." Jake nearly choked on his coffee. "You're joking." She shook her head. It's on the agenda. They actually gave her a speaking slot. That was all the invitation he needed. By the time Jake arrived at the town hall, the room was already buzzing. Reporters had shown up, no doubt hoping for another viral moment. Karen sat near the front, back straight, hands folded, the picture of composed righteousness. But he could see it, the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched against the table. She wasn't as confident as she once had been. When her name was called, she rose with forced dignity and strode to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice measured but firm, "our town is at risk. We are being led astray step by step by those who reject the natural order. We cannot, must not, allow this corruption to spread." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Jake leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, waiting. "Sunglasses," she continued, gripping the podium like a preacher at a pulpit, "are a tool of defiance, a rejection of the light given to us. They are worn to shield, to hide, to deceive." A scoff came from somewhere in the crowd. Someone else let out a chuckle. Karen stiffened. "I am calling for a ban on sunglasses in public spaces," she pushed on, her voice rising. "We must take a stand before it is too late." Silence followed. Not the odd kind she had probably hoped for, but the heavy, disbelieving kind. People exchanged glances. A man near the back whispered something to his friend, who immediately snorted. Then, before she could continue, Jake stood. He didn't move to the podium. He didn't need to. His voice carried. "Karen," he said, calm and deliberate, "do you wear sunscreen?" She faltered. "What? Sunscreen? Hats. You ever use an umbrella when it's raining?" She blinked, caught off guard. "That's not the same thing." "Sure it is." He took a step forward, gesturing around the room. "We protect ourselves from the elements all the time. That's not rejecting nature, it's just common sense." Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. Her confidence wavered. Jake pressed on. "You drive a car, right? Pretty sure those have windshields. I bet your house has curtains too. Or do you sit there in broad daylight, soaking in God's light, 24 hours a day?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Karen's jaw clenched. "This is about respect," she snapped, voice cracking. "You mock tradition. You mock faith." "No," Jake said, stepping even closer. "I mock you." The room erupted. People clapped, some outright laughing. A few even pulled out their phones, recording every second. Karen's face burned red. Her hands trembled against the podium. She knew, just as everyone else did, that she had lost. A council member cleared his throat, barely concealing his amusement. "Thank you for your passionate concerns, Ms. Langley. However, this request is obviously denied." And just like that, it was over. Jake watched as Karen stood there, frozen, the weight of her failure pressing down on her. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the room. No speech, no dramatic exit, just a quiet, defeated retreat. But fate wasn't done with her yet. A week later, while scrolling through his phone, Jake stumbled upon something that made him laugh so hard he nearly dropped it. A photo. Karen. In a grocery store parking lot, wearing sunglasses. The internet noticed, too. Within hours, the image was everywhere, captions practically writing themselves. Asterisk. Looks like Karen finally saw the light. Asterisk. The hypocrisy was too delicious. Karen, the self-proclaimed warrior against eyewear, caught using the very thing she condemned. By morning, she had deleted all her social media. By the end of the week, she was gone. No one knew exactly where she had moved to, but the apartment was empty, the protests had ceased, and the town was quieter for it. Jake walked through the park one afternoon, the sunlight filtering through the trees, his sunglasses firmly in place. Some battles didn't need swords. Sometimes all it took was patience and a little poetic justice.